Go ahead.
So I want to convene this meeting of the Board of Directors for the San Lorenzo Valley Water District, where we were holding a special workshop, uh, December 1st, 2025. Leo, would you take roll, please?
President Smalley,
Here.
Vice President Lane. Here. Director Foltz,
Here.
Director Rust,
Here.
and Director Larday is absent.
Okay. Any changes to the brief agenda that we have this evening?
There are no changes.
Okay. Oral communications. This portion of the meeting is for any members of the public that wish to bring up an item that's not on the agenda this evening, that is part of the jurisdiction within the district. And if anybody does, it's limited to the standard 3 minutes. Seeing none here and seeing none online, we will then continue. No unfinished business, new business. The integrated pest management policy is what we're going to be discussing this evening. And this was something that was discussed at an environmental committee meeting in September this year. And it's my understanding that input from the committee was this needed further discussion and an expanded discussion. So staff wanted to have a special meeting just to discuss the integrated pest management policy, since it was something that they thought had enough import to a number of other members of the public and to members of the board. So with that, I will be leading the workshop and facilitating. And we will get to questions from the public at some point, comments on this. But first, we'd like to hear from staff. So, and it's my understanding that Chris is taking this from here. So,
yeah,
go ahead, Chris.
And I have a presentation that we will be walking through. Is everyone able to see that screen? All right. Well, just let me know if not, and we can
one or the other.
adjust as needed.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. We're having some technical difficulties, but we'll get it going. Cool. So thank you all for being here. I want to provide a brief introduction to kind of follow on what President Smalley was talking about. As to why we're having this meeting, we proposed an update to the district's integrated pest management policy, and we brought that to the environmental committee in September of this year. And their comments were that we needed to further discuss this and see where public sentiment was at to make sure that we were aligned with our policy and what the public wants to be seeing. So the goal of this workshop is to gather public and board of directors input on the current pest management policy and our invasive plant management in general. The agenda for this meeting, I will provide a little presentation on the pest management policy history and kind of the background of where it came from. And then we will have a general discussion between the board, the public, and staff to, just kind of gauge the sense of where we are all at. I'll also note that we have a couple of experts in attendance virtually who are able to help answer some of our questions. So that is Graham Hunting. He's the Deputy Agricultural Commissioner for the County of Santa Cruz. And then we also have Dr. Jody McGraw, who is a consulting ecologist and biologist, who is our main lead on sand hills restoration. So the district's historical pesticide use. The district had historically utilized herbicides before the pest management policy was adopted. However, in 2019, the district banned the use of glyphosate, and they adopted the pest management policy in 2021. And the pesticide use in the 4 years since the adoption of the pest management policy is summarized in the pesticide application log, which is part of the agenda. But to summarize, it consists of 2 instances, which include regular office pest management and the Olympia Watershed Restoration Project herbicide usage. And we'll get into that in a little more detail in a further slide. So to go into a little more detail on the pest management policy, this is the district's current approach to invasive plant management, and it focuses on prevention and other forms of treatment with herbicide use as a last resort. Pesticides which meet the following criteria are banned from use under that policy. So those are things that are known to be carcinogenic by the US EPA. It is things that are on the Prop 65 list, which is the Safe Drinking Water and Toxic Enforcement Act, or pesticides that are EPA toxicity category 1, which are known to be carcinogenic. So there's basically 3 separate qualifications that it needs to pass in order to be allowed for use, or if it is within any of those, it would not be allowed for use. And then one note on this is that district staff support the current pest management policy. We believe that it's working as it needs to, and that it should stay along those same guidelines, using that same guiding principle of the allowable pesticides. Now, a great example of a project where we have used herbicides, and the only project that we have used herbicides since the pest management policy was adopted, is the Olympia Watershed Sandhills Restoration Project. So this project removed invasive French and Portuguese broom, as well as black locust trees, which are also invasive, from 63 acres of the Olympia watershed. And we utilized herbicide for the black locust trees, which would grow back otherwise. And you can see on the map, it's bigger on the next slide, we'll see. But the pink kind of corridors are the black locust areas. And then there's a few green dots on the map, and those are the areas where it was used for broom. And for this project, we use Garlon 4 Ultra, which was applied by a contracted qualified pesticide applicator. We use the cut stump method. So that is using a dauber to paint on the pesticide rather than spraying. We did not use any spraying. And we estimate that approximately 10 ounces of herbicide was used across approximately 0.88 acres. And we brought a little estimation or a little way to show you approximately what that amount used was. So it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 ounces. And the next slide here, hopefully you can see that, but the pink areas are the areas where the black locust trees were located. And so we have a polygon there, but obviously not the whole polygon was treated. It was just discrete trees within that polygon. So really, we didn't treat 0.8 acres. It was much less than that. And then if you can see, there's 3 green dots on here, and those were broom that had herbicide applied. Now, why was herbicide applied to these? It was because the broom could not be physically removed. And so rather than let it stay there and reproduce and spread seed, we decided to cut it and treat it to prevent that one from kind of continuing the infestation. Now, here's just some photos from the project. You can see the massive amount of broom, and this is all piled at the front of the Olympia watershed property. It was a hundreds of thousands of dollars project, and the goal is that this project would be kind of the big push, and that hopefully we can maintain this from here and prevent the broom from kind of taking over again. Some of this broom was very well established and was quite massive, as you can kind of see in the photo. So that's something that we want to prevent, because this really helps with the sandhill species, and it is part of our habitat restoration efforts is to have these invasive plants removed. And with that, I will pass it back to Mark to have some of this discussion. I think the aspect that I'm really interested in hearing from the public and the board as we move towards updating our pest management policy is just thoughts on the current pest management policy, our eligibility criteria for those herbicides and pesticides. And yeah, whether that feels sufficient to everyone or one way or the other. I just like to gauge where everyone is at. So with that, I'll pass it back.
Okay. I had a brief discussion earlier today with Jason and Chris. And one of the questions that I asked that I think is significant to this discussion is, what's the district doing currently for invasive species? In addition to what Chris just described to us, that one-time application of the Garlon 4 that we used. So, Chris, can you describe that to us?
Yeah, so that project, the big broom removal project, was in collaboration with the Resource Conservation District. And they have now partnered with us again and generously kind of pushed some of their grant funding towards maintaining that broom removal. So we currently have a grant funded project to both identify the most important areas to maintain immediately, as well as in the long term, as well as kind of figuring out that maintenance plan. And then there's also money set aside to actually start removing this broom. And part of that funding goes towards the volunteer program. So the district recently launched a volunteer program where we get volunteers out on the watershed. They help us to pull broom, while we also have experts like Dr. Jody McGraw out there who can tell them about the species, tell them about the problems out there, but also the beautiful endangered species, and just tell them more about the ecology, geology, and whatever else they want to know. So we think it's a great program, and we're thankful to the RCD for kind of providing some of that funding. This volunteer program is super helpful in terms of maintaining the brooms, but if from the map, we had 63 acres of broom that we pulled. And so volunteer work is not going to fully fulfill that. So we are also seeking other grant funding. And also when our habitat conservation plan is put into place, we will have funding to pull from to actually carry out maintenance of this. But the issue is that in the interim, which, it's probably like a year or two until the habitat conservation plan can actually be adopted and the start of money actually flowing towards this project. And so it's really this interim time that we're trying to figure out how to manage this brewing so that this big project doesn't just go to waste and we actually maintain it until we get the funding to fully deal with it.
Okay, all right. Then I'd like to hear from the board first at this point for any questions that we may have or comments on the integrated pest management plan. So, Alina?
Yeah, so how this kind of originally started is was the RCD came and spoke to the environmental committee and they were doing the shaded field break work. And they said that they couldn't treat broom on our property due to our policy. So could you talk a little bit about what became of that and how going forward, maybe we wouldn't lose out on opportunities like that to control broom?
Yeah, so for the Lockhart Gold Shaded Field Break project, we have collaborated with the RCD on that, and they did a bunch of great work for us. However, they decided not to treat the broom on our property. They treated the broom on, I believe, every other property, but they decided not to treat it on our property because we weren't allowed to use the pesticides. That they on the other properties they were using glyphosate. a glyphosate-based product. And because we had prohibitions against that, we did not get that broom treated. And so it's still out there today. Um, that is on the Olympia property, but it's not part of the project that was completed. Yeah, that's basic stuff.
And I'd like to also note that Santa Cruz water was a part of that shaded fuel break as well, and they ended up going ahead and treating broom on their property. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's all I have for now, but maybe.
Okay, okay. We can come back to the board at some point after we go through with other discussions. Director Russ?
Just to kind of understand how this works, the locust trees that were on, I guess, the 0.88 acres, what's your guess as to the number of them that were stumped?
That'd be hard to say. Jody, would you have a guess as to because she was out there
I
a
mean,
lot?
are we talking 1,000? I mean, I just have no idea. Or 100?
I would, yeah, if we're gonna do a logarithmic scale, I would say 100, around 100 at the most. Probably somewhere between 50 and 100.
Okay.
Okay, and so each
That
of
includes
those,
a lot of small stems.
okay, so each of them were daubed with
Yeah.
herbicide. Okay. And I didn't understand, when was this the massive broom physically removed? When was that project completed?
Yeah, so that project was from November 2024 to March 2025.
Okay,
So it was about a 5-6 month project.
okay. So that area has already seen spring and summer, and I guess are young broom coming back?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, and probably as thick as ever.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any alternate treatments for broom? I mean, I guess I mean fire. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
So one option is flaming,
Flaming.
as you
Okay.
mentioned, fire.
Okay.
If you get them when they're young in the right kind of growth phase, you can use a blowtorch and kind of just burn them. Yeah, and there are a few others. Jody can speak more to that, especially in the sandhills habitat. It might kind of limit some of those. But Jody, could you speak a little bit to other broom management pathways?
Sure, yeah, you mentioned the flaming. For the really small seedlings, you can also just hoe them where they're very dense. Obviously, that's effective. Once they start getting, 6 inches or more, there's hand pulling. That a fair amount of that goes on. Just any kind of pulling with a weed wrench or by hand. The herbicide we already talked about. There's obviously other herbicide that rather than cut stump, you can do foliar spray, but obviously that's not really consistent with the IPM policy. Grazing doesn't tend to work, anything like that. Just it's the broom plants are really good at resprouting, so it will sort of defoliate them, but it won't kill them. And a lot of times, what you get back is just harder to manage, frankly, on your second when you finally do have to go for a treatment that would actually kill it. Fire is kind of mixed effects, I think. In some places it opens up the canopy and then brings in more light and can actually promote broom, so it's not used as a widespread treatment. And obviously, in this context with the San Lorenzo Valley and the smoke and everything, it can be kind of challenging to implement that, but that is something that could be done. I think that's probably about everything I can think of.
And it is basically all 68 acres, or are we talking all of that is basically sprouting broom again?
I'll show you the map again. Here real quick. There was a little bit on all 68 acres, but there were definitely areas that were more heavily invested.
I guess I'm just wondering, are we talking a few acres, or is it the
So
yellow?
the highlighted areas or the filled in areas here, are the more dense broom areas, so the yellow and the brown.
Oh, yellow and brown. Okay.
But within the blue dashed line is the extents of the whole project. So we were pulling broom from that whole area, but the yellow and the brown were the more heavily infested areas.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're looking at 20, 30 acres of pretty infested.
Yeah.
And I've not been to this watershed. I would love to explore it, but it looks like there's places that are pretty steep, or is it?
Yeah, there are places that are steep. It used to be an old mine. And so one of the, faces is not vertical, but pretty near to it. So yeah, there's certainly areas that are steep.
Okay, and there's no, I mean, I guess I'm just struggling for alternates. So we talked flaming, and then is there just mechanically, well, I guess hoeing and pulling? Is there anything that can be done by machine?
That is where the sandhills part comes in because it is a very protected area, and these species live near under the soil. They're like 6 to 12 inches down, I want to say. And so even we had to get some equipment out there to pull these big things of broom, and we had to be very careful with where they treaded and make sure that we followed all these precautions so that we weren't harming the species. So that's really like mechanical big equipment is
Yeah, you can't go in there and plow it.
nah. Yeah.
And I assume that broom thrives in disturbed soil, right? So it's very tricky.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just add briefly that yeah, the broom is also it's not always a monoculture. It's growing in and amongst native plants, and as much as possible, we want those native plants to grow to help suppress the broom. So mastication, yeah, you're right to ask about mechanical mowing, mastication. Those are other techniques that can be used in like a monoculture, and as Chris said, maybe in a place that's not so sensitive, but also usually isn't advised in an area that has native plants growing in and amongst it that would, be obviously impacted by that as well.
Don't they, when they masticate it, still usually spray? Because that was with the fuel break.
Yeah. It can definitely sprout back depending on how deep you get it, because you need to get the entire plant, which is the issue. So that's why just cutting it doesn't.
Right. No,
Doesn't cut
I
it.
pulled broom myself on my property. You can get it when it's about a foot high, and then it gets really tough.
Yeah.
So outside of hundreds of volunteers, literally trying to pull up all these young plants, this is a really tough one.
Yeah. In the past, we have also had California or AmeriCorps crews come out here and help us out with it. I don't believe AmeriCorps is around anymore, but that is like another avenue. But again, it's not a long-term solution to this. Yeah, it's just a band-aid to try to get as much as we can.
And just for reference, the what was it? The one that was used, the Garland 4. What is its life? How long does it stay in the environment? I guess active.
I do not have that answer for you. I am not sure if Mr. Hunting, if you know. But
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking are there any herbicides that are available that are category 3 that would actually treat broom and that wouldn't stay in the environment for a long, long time? I mean, I'm just grasping at straws, I guess.
yeah, I mean, there's a whole world of herbicides out there that could be explored. However, Garlon is a relatively widely used and effective.
And it's effective on broom?
Yeah.
As a spray?
No, we just dab it on there.
Oh, wow. But for young broom,
Yeah, I mean, for young broom, you are probably just going to want to pull it.
okay. So, okay. All right.
Yeah, it's the big stuff, especially stuff that you can't get out by hand or even with a weed wrench that herbicide kind of came into play on this project.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Director Schultz.
Is there broom on the, any other part of the Olympia watershed that we own?
Yes.
Yeah, so this isn't showing the complete broom.
Yeah, so the extents of the watershed are the black line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's broom outside of the dashed line.
Correct.
A lot? How many acres?
I don't have that number, but as you're going through the property, you see it.
Just to correct the record for one of the things you mentioned earlier, Rick Rogers had actually banned the use of glyphosate by his operations team prior to the board banning it more generally. So we had, as a district, dramatically reduced, if not eliminated, the use of glyphosate way before the board actually took formal action. So it wasn't just the board did it. A previous operations director, then general manager, had made that determination even before we did. So just wanted to make sure that was really clear for everybody. You know, the thing that strikes me about all of this is, I mean, we're all familiar with Sisyphus, right? Rolling the boulder up the hill. So, you know, the thing I've never really got clear in my head is what is the management plan for this? Because broom doesn't respect boundaries. I mean, we could pull and spend all the money we have pulling broom, and very quickly it would be back just the way that it was. I mean, I kind of use that understory growth project that was done there on Graham Hill Road about 2 years ago in the wake of the CGU fire. Big production, signs, publicity, all that. You look out there now, you can't even tell anything was done. So until there's a real clear plan about how we're going to do this and what kind of money we're going to spend and whether or not we're going to have priorities for certain areas, et cetera, I'm really unconvinced that there's really a sustainable plan here to actually eliminate broom. I just don't see it. And I think because we live in effectively a rainforest, at least part of the year, though it is easier to pull broom in the winter, right?
Oh, yeah.
When the ground is wet and looser, which is what I do in my place. I just don't, I think the discussion goes in the wrong direction. The other thing I wanted to focus in on a little bit is around the use of the words last resort. So what was it? What were the steps that were taken prior to the use of Garland 4 that made the Garland 4 the only solution as a last resort?
We went through our normal process and the treatment that we were using, which was the only effective treatment on some of these big brooms. It didn't work. We couldn't get the broom out. And so as a last resort, we cut it and treat it.
Is there a time of year when cutting the broom is more effective to retard its growth back?
I would refer to Jody on that one.
I mean, I don't think that's a huge difference. The herbicide is very effective, but you're saying that if you didn't use herbicide, is there a time of year where you could cut it and it wouldn't grow back? I would say we've never seen that. There maybe have reduced likelihood or maybe less dense growth if you cut it during the dry season when plants are really starved for water, but we have not seen that that's an effective alternative to cutting and treating. The plants do just grow back no matter what.
I mean, it almost sounds like it's the first resort under a particular condition that you can't pull it up, right? That is, there were no other actions that were taken to not use herbicide.
We tried to pull them.
How do you pull them?
There's these weed wrenches. I actually have a picture on the.
Yeah, let's show it.
They're monsters.
Well, I mean, I have something myself called a
There we
polar bear.
Yeah, polar bear. So
Is it polar bears? Okay.
yeah, weed wrench, you can see he's holding one in that bottom right picture. Sorry, it's a little small. But yeah, basically you just leverage the broom out.
And,
So it
and,
pulls out the whole root.
and this was done during the wet season.
Yes.
And we tried to get it out and it wouldn't come out even during the wet season.
Some of them were like overhead, like you can see the ones that he's next to are overhead. Yeah, some of them were just impossible. Also in the mine pit there, they left random rocks and stuff around. And when it grows around rocks or like railroad tracks or whatever, if it has something to latch onto, it becomes really hard to physically remove.
I mean, it is disappointing that we're in year 8 of our habitat conservation plan process, where we've been waiting for that to be done in order for us to submit it to get approval. And we're still, I guess, I mean, when I started on the board in 2018, we were a year and a half out from being able to use it. And 7 years later, we're a year and a half out from being able to use it. So I'm hopeful that there's some significant progress going to be made soon on this, so we can get out from under this trying to manage in this interim period before we have the final approval. So at this point in time, I'm not convinced that we should be using any herbicide. I really wish that this question had come back to the board for a discussion prior to its use, given the first statement in the policy it is the goal of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District to eliminate the use of pesticides in district property. I understand that there was a loophole that was found to be able to go ahead with it, but given a time of ambiguity, it's always best to come back to the board for clarification on policy, because that is what we do, establish policy. So I'm a little disappointed in use of the Garland 4. It is what it is, obviously, but I think in the future, if there is an ambiguity on this or any other policy, I would really hope staff would come back to the board for clarification. I'll probably have some more things to say later after we hear from the public. Also, by the way, given this is a workshop, there may be times when someone may want to speak more than once. I'm hopeful there's some flexibility, given this is a workshop, to be able to do that, particularly if people have new things to say or want to respond to other assertions that are made by other people.
We'll see what questions come up from the public. So a couple questions that are prompted from the discussion. Chris, you mentioned the Lockhart Gulch area that RCD was not able to treat with the glyphosate, which is what they were using. And part of what Director Fultz just said prompts the question also. So what is our plan then to treat that area, since it was apparently part of whatever the limited area of the Olympia watershed that we were attempting to get to? And
so that is a separate area. It was
Right.
not part of this project,
right,
and it's not as high of a priority for us to treat.
right,
It was just that they were going to treat this whole ridge line,
right.
because it was a shaded fuel break.
Okay.
And so there was the opportunity for it to be treated for us. Move forward with that.
Right. Okay. Okay. And my review of the pest management plan, the district's goal is to reduce, as much as we can, that herbicides are last resort. I feel that if we've used that 10 ounces of Garland in the last 5 years, that's a very limited use of any herbicides. So in my view, yes, the district is following what the integrated pest management plan was. And I don't see that you needed to come back to the board for that. It was allowed in the pest management plan. So and it's my understanding from reviewing the agenda from that environmental committee meeting that staff was recommending other procedural change to the pest management plan. The one that strikes me the most readily is changing the integrated pest management coordinator to environmental man. Okay, because I was asking the question as I was reading through it. Well, who is that person? Oh, and as I expected, so it's procedural things like that. Staff, I expect after hearing other questions, would then eventually bring back to the board for that. So, okay. So that's those are my thoughts at this point. Questions that I have at this point. So we will come back to the board for further questions or discussion, but we'd like to hear from the public now. If you want to speak, either questions or comments, please use the mic. And if the questions or input, particularly comments, not questions, if input that you as an individual feel that the district staff or the board needs to see, please submit in writing. I look at all comments from public members in writing that I can then consider later, and it's easier for me to absorb that. So if it's lengthy, please submit that as a follow-up then to us. Okay, so first public member, please.
I have a procedural question first. I hope it won't take away from my 3 minutes here. Is when I talked in front of the environmental committee in September, I was cut off by 3 minutes. And one of the discussions that I had was that this expanded discussion would allow me to speak longer than 3 minutes. So, Mark, I have 7 minutes of concise content that I want to speak to on here. I was led to believe that I would have the opportunity to do that here. I wish you would give me that time to do that.
I've talked to staff about that, and it's my feel that 3 minutes should be sufficient. I understand you may have along with other public members, may have more extensive. Do I limit it to 10 minutes for somebody else or to 15 minutes? Because I don't have any other guidelines like that. So no, I want to.
You have some flexibility yourself here as the president of the board.
I do, but
it's a workshop.
I understand it. I understand it's a workshop. So I'm seeking questions. So let's see what the questions are.
Okay, I'll go with this. I have somebody else that will read past my 3 minutes.
Okay, please.
Which is contrary to what I believe this workshop was designed to do. Expanded discussion is not a 3 minute limitation. Hello, my name is Rick Moran. I'm from Ben Lomond. In 2001, I became the Life Lab instructor at Quail Hollow Elementary School. Life Lab is a science-based environmental education program centered around a school garden. Quail Hollow School is built on a sandhill habitat. Those sandhills were our classroom. A few years later, I became a teacher at White Oak High School. Again, sandhills habitat. I taught environmental science. We built a vegetable garden and used the surrounding sandhills as a living laboratory. During that time, I used the Sandhills Alliance for Natural Diversity website as a source for my curriculum. We learned about the unique plants and animals and the geologic history from that form these sandhills. I also used the Water District website, specifically the Sandhills Conservation and Management Plan of 2004. One piece of that information stuck with me. Quote, in chemical control, herbicides are used to kill exotic plants or inhibit their growth. The porous nature of Zyanti soils may increase the likelihood that herbicides used in the sandhills will be able to reach groundwater and thus potentially contaminate the public water supply. For this reason, the San Lorenzo Valley Water District prohibits the use of most types of herbicides in their lands. Use of the herbicides in adjacent and hills habitat could similarly contaminate the aquifer and harm sandhills animals, including the endangered insects. That was written by Jody McGraw, who was here and was a consultant back then and still remains to be a consultant. In 2016, I retired from teaching, and the Water District was looking for volunteers to serve on committees. I was the first citizen member of the Environmental Committee, where I served 2 terms. It was during my second year on that committee that a plan for broom removal was on the agenda. The plan called for the application of Roundup glyphosate on 1,800 plants. The International Agency for Research on Cancer had recently released a report stating that Roundup was a probable carcinogen. Plus, I had my own experience with the unintended consequences of DDT, Agent Orange, and malathion. Therefore, I voted against approval of that plan. That action resulted in the mobilization of Valley residents who were also opposed to the use of Roundup on our watershed. After many public hearings and an election, the district passed a ban on glyphosate. After being appointed to the board in 2019, I made a commitment to get an IPM policy adopted by the district. I worked with the district environmental planner to draft this integrated pest management plan.
Thank you, Rick.
The intent of this plan, if I could go on, it's just concise little repetition of some stuff that you need to hear. You need to hear this, Mark.
But Rick, I don't hear any questions. That's what I'm seeking.
I'm giving you some information here, okay? That will, I don't have it.
Rick, you said you have somebody else that could continue for
Yeah.
you. I would ask you to do that. If there's somebody else that wants to continue this, fine.
You know, this seems a little bit odd.
I understand.
I mean, if there's anybody here that wouldn't give the rest of his time.
If everyone spoke for 10 minutes, it'd be over 2 hours.
And I didn't understand that we could only ask questions.
Does anybody else here need more than 5 minutes? Does anybody else here need more than 3 minutes?
Yeah, I think, I think in order to ask questions that.
Does anybody else want to ask questions that are well, I'm trying to keep the meeting within the time frames.
We're not worried about that. We want to hear it.
Please continue then. Please proceed.
Thank you. It's concise and I'm trying to get to the point.
I
The intent of
disagree
this
that it's
plan-
concise. Please proceed.
The intent of this plan is to remove any doubt that our district is moving away from using any pesticides and that we would be transparent with the management of the watershed. Now, there seems to be a shift towards more pesticide use. I'm here to caution against going backward. First of all, the continued use of herbicide presents an unacceptable danger to our watershed, the endangered species and the crews that apply this herbicide. Garlon 4, with its active ingredient trichlofire, is only part of the danger. Garlon 4 has many data gaps in its analysis. It's hard for scientists and regulators to keep up with the sheer number of pesticides in use. Just because a manufacturer says that there are no known adverse effects doesn't mean that future studies won't find dangerous consequences. In many cases, independent scientists do. For example, the unintended consequences of DDT, Agent Orange, or Roundup. Bayer Monsanto has paid out over $10 billion in damages to over 100,000 people because their product is harmful to humans. Garlon 4 formula has many additives to increase its effectiveness. One such additive is petroleum distillates. Yes, they're using petroleum distillates to save an endangered species. According to best practices used by the Salmonid Restoration Federation, an agency that we work with, the Water District has worked with, quote, some of the ingredients in formulated herbicide products may pose a greater risk. For example, some oil-based emulsifiable concentrate formulation, which Garlon 4 is, may be harmful to soft-bodied adult or larval insects, end quote. A Mount Herman June beetle is such an insect. The past, present, and future use of Garlon 4 creates a chronic condition that has unknown consequences and an unacceptable risk to our watershed, aquifer, flora, and fauna, and to the workers that apply this product. The cost-benefit analysis that says that the use of herbicides is a lower cost is based on a narrow, short-sighted view. The potential danger of the herbicide getting into the aquifer far outweighs any short-term financial savings. Cheap and easy is not the safest path. Let us not forget that these introduced plants have no negative effect on water quality. In the San Lorenzo Valley and North County Watershed Sanitary Survey of 2013, Water District consultants Kennedy and Jenks wrote that, quote, there is a pervasive sensitivity to chemical use and a general public sentiment opposed to such use, which will continue to limit application at the watershed scale, end quote. They got it right. We're a water district first and foremost. This is not a new sentiment, and the people of this valley deserve a land management plan that reflects the best chances for safe water. To do this, I recommend that the first goal of this document be to implement an organic land management plan devoid of any chemical or pesticide use. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Okay, does somebody else from the public wish to speak?
Hi, I'm Mike Duffy. I'm on Felton. I just have a couple of quick questions. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to comment. I noticed most of the discussion about management and Broome has been regarding the Olympia watershed and the sand hills, but the district has a lot more property than that. And I wonder what's being done to the district's properties, say in the bird zone, where obviously the response to Broome and invasive after fire is going to be a little more extreme. I don't know if there's a volunteer process going on. I just was hoping you could comment on that. And I see that we have Graham from the Ag Commissioner's office, and I wonder if perhaps some conversation or some clarification could be brought forth regarding the regulatory restrictions for any type of herbicide application, be that Garlon 4 or glyphosate. Thank you.
Okay. I would like staff to address questions that do come up from the public. So I think I heard two from Mr. Duffy.
Yeah. So most of our focus in terms of the broom removal is in Olympia, because it is a property where we have those endangered species and really high value habitat of these endemic species that are nowhere else in the world. So that is really where our focus is. We have 2,500 acres of land approximately. And so, yeah, it's just not realistic to manage broom on basically the rest of our land. Broom is managed around any facilities or fire fuel reduction, but otherwise it's not really managed very much. Yeah, that's just the reality of the situation that we're in. Also, a lot of our properties are either inaccessible or excessively steep. Yeah, it's just a lot of our property is not necessarily either able to be managed or needed to be managed in that way. Yeah, I'll leave that one there. And then I will ask Graham from the Ag Commissioner's office to just kind of talk about the pesticide process in terms of you guys receive reports and how else the Commissioner's office might be kind of involved in the pesticide process.
Yeah, good evening. How does it sound? Can you hear me okay?
Great.
Yes.
Great. Thank you for inviting me to the meeting and the opportunity to provide you any information you'd like to hear, specifically regarding pesticide registration and regulation in the state of California. This project, from what I understand from Chris, was utilizing a qualified applicator through a registered pest control business. In the state of California, the requirements to become a qualified applicator and to have a registered business are quite stringent. There's numerous licenses and tests that has to be taken to assure that the information that they are acting on to utilize a pesticide is in the best use and most effective use of that material. So particularly in this one, in herbicides, the use of herbicides in the state of California is of course highly regulated and often in IPM practices the last resort. There are many other things you can do to control the plants that you do not want, the pest plants. When it comes to the applications for projects such as these outside of agriculture, these are considered non-production, non-agricultural productions. The licensee, who is the pest control business main, and the applicators all have to have specific categories to understand the correct usage to avoid environmental contamination and effective use of that material as needed. So dabbing is what I heard was the application method for this one. Is very spot specific. You're going after plants by themselves. This isn't a broad application. This is an aerial application. So in that context, it's very limited exposure to the environment, is from what I understand. And of course, all pesticides are highly regulated in the sense that every label is written on a federal level, and the label is the law. So whatever is written on the label in terms of how it can be used, its toxicity, protective measures for employees, quantities per acre on a commodity or on a right-of-way or in a forested area, are all very specifically laid out. And that is a law, and they have to follow that to the T. Also, the reporting of it, every use of it has to be reported through that pest control business license, so it is registered and it becomes public information. So that's the general picture of what pesticide use in California is these days. We spend a lot of time and have quite a few staff monitoring these things on a daily basis. So I'm happy to continue going or help give you more information where it's needed.
Thank you. That is a perfect introduction, and we might have some more questions for you as we move forward.
Okay. Other members of the public, please.
Hi, Deborah Lowen from Montego Canyon. I didn't know if I'd be here tonight, so I sent the board individual letters. I hope you had a chance to read them before this meeting.
I did.
I live pretty close to the Olympia watershed, and when it opened up to the public, we've gone hiking there many times with our dog and just on walks. I also went on a tour of the watershed sponsored by the district, actually by Santa Margarita. What really struck me is right along the roadways going in further, which not necessarily open to the public, were these giant forests of broom. Some of them over 10 feet tall, some of them over 1 inch thick. This was during the time that glyphosate was used to manage broom. So the lesson for me from that, using the scientific method of observation, is that glyphosate is not the problem. The problem is, as Director Fultz pointed out, the problem is the management plan. What's missing a lot from this discussion is the knowledge of history from the water district. I have a little bit of history. We joined in 2016, but I'm very familiar with operations before then. My impression is that the district every 10, 15, 20 years decided to do a broom eradication project. Owning property in San Lorenzo Valley, anyone here can tell you that's not going to cut it. All of us probably who have lived here any amount of time have pulled a fair share of broom. My husband and I had to clear our property when we bought it. It was massively overgrown with broom. There's hardly any today. We pulled broom that we borrowed brush pullers from the fire district at the time they were letting them out. They only go up to a certain size, and yeah, it's very difficult to do the big stuff. We used a jack and a chain, came out very easily. Too often I hear we can't do anything else except the nuclear option, which you call the last resort. Please think of it as the nuclear option. We can all pretend that these pesticides and herbicides go away, but they do not. And they affect our water. They affect our health. They affect our happiness of living in this valley. I encourage the board to put a ban on all of these herbicides and move away from the use of herbicides, especially glyphosate. I think from reviewing some of the environmental committee meetings, it sounded like you were trying to find loopholes to go back and use that. Please don't. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Kim Morello, and I live in Ben Lomond. I have a question for Jody. I'm not sure what's until the cat.
If you could direct the questions to staff may be able to address. If staff can't, I'd like staff to be able to go out to Jody then. So please.
My question is, have you guys visited the idea of using a horticultural vinegar?
I believe that has been tested before, and I know it can be useful as a herbicide. But yeah, I would pass that to Jody and see if that's something that has been tested out there before.
Is it possible to wait for an answer on that?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I have not used horticultural vinegar.
Okay.
Personally, I'm not sure if I know of anyone who's used it, period.
We use that at Cabrillo in the horticulture department for integrated pest management way back when, and it worked beautifully. We also came in and eradicated as part of our program. Every semester, the students would go out, and it was just part of the program that we would get credit for. So, I mean, this was a long time ago, but I think with Cabrillo, I think with UCSD that there are horticulture programs where students can come in for extra credit or part of the curriculum, learn about it, learn about integrated pest management. And I would really, really encourage you guys to look into a horticultural grade vinegar for this project, because it does work, and we used it and it worked really well. And the other thing is, I think it's really important to think about is getting the broom out before it flowers. There is a time to remove it where it's not going to spread as quickly. So those are a couple of thoughts to think about.
Is it daubed? The horticulture vinegar, is it daubed on a stump, or how is it used?
You know what? You can use it any way you want. You can use a pump sprayer, which we did as students back in the day.
So I would ask staff, if you're not familiar with this, please either contact her or discuss with Jody because I think we are seeking other options.
There are alternatives.
Right.
I'm
Okay.
really sorry.
But if the member of the public is bringing something, yes, we should look at that if that's.
It's very discouraging for me. We've lived here since '82. I have, been a part of that old group that was here, and we did ban the use of the different things that aren't a chosen, good choice. And I'm just so sorry that we're back revisiting it when there's options out there. So sorry, I wasn't expecting to speak, and it just really got me. I have to throw that out there, but I hope you guys will check into it. It does work. You're welcome to contact me, Cabrillo Horticulture, UCSD. Everybody's here to help because nobody wants pesticides, especially around our drinking water. And there is a area, I don't remember, it's been too long, but there is a footage that you want to stay away from all water that's used using any kind of pesticide. So something to think about.
Hi, good evening. Donna Furtick, Ben Lomond. I have a couple questions. Are there any other pesticides or herbicides besides Garland 4 that the water district is currently using?
Yes, in our pesticide application list, we have the pesticide that's used on our office building, which I forget exactly what it is. One of them is like peppermint oil and like some other like active ingredient, and then there was another one on there as well. Those ones are not even on the like on the list that categorize toxicity. They're not even like classified. So yeah, they're lower risk, obviously.
And then this might have already been brought up, but I'm gonna bring it up again. Have we applied any pesticides or herbicides on other district properties? Like roads, pump stations, or around water tanks?
No,
No, so just.
not since the pest management policy has been adopted, not since I've been around.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, Barbara Norwell, Ben Roman. I looked at the MSDS for the Scalar 4, and it is very specific in many categories about not letting runoff from firefighting. Okay, we're 5 years from a horrific fire that we had here. If we have a fire in that area, what do you have a mitigation plan in place for the runoff, for the herbicide that's going to go into our drains and our rivers and our waterways? That's one. The other thing that is also in the MSDS material safety data sheet, pesticide is toxic to fish. So if we go back, okay, and think about the whole purpose for getting rid of this and the endangered species that we're trying to protect, which is the Mount Herman June beetle. I understand that habitat is one of the reasons for many of the restrictions that you have in being able to just plow the land. The way the June beetle feeds itself, the larva feeds from the stems of the plants underground. If you are dabbing this toxic chemical, okay, into these plants, and it's going into the root system of the plant, and the larva that is under the ground, that is will soon become the June beetle, is eating on this. We're killing the habitat of the June beetle. In addition, the larva for the June beetle is also food for birds, specifically, I think brown thrashers, blue jays, and there was one other that I can't remember off the top of my head. So now we've got the MSDS that says it's toxic to fish. We're killing the June beetles that are eating the roots. And then the birds that are eating on the larvae that had died on the roots are also endangered. So to me, it seems like the other solution that was mentioned seems like a much more reasonable aspect to kind of throttle it back a little bit and take a look at all the options that might be available. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beth Thomas from Van Lommel. And I have a couple of observations to make, and just from sitting here, a couple of questions been answered, but I have serious concerns when the two experts who are here and ask questions about Garland 4 and other things don't know how long it lives in the soil. I mean, that's a quick Google search. And I can tell you it's up to 90 days, according to the statistics that they maintain. I also have a concern that one of the cautions, Barbara was mentioning another of the cautions, one is that in sandy soils, it has a tendency to go deeper in the soil. It's collected by soils, and when the soil is very sandy and porous, it goes down, and that's exactly what's there. I hope that the board will direct that there will not continue to be any use of Garland 4 until we figure out whether we want an integrated pest management or plant management. I keep hearing different things, maybe they're both. But I think an invasive species management and a watershed management may be two separate things. And we have to decide what's appropriate here.
And to clarify on the integrated pest management policy, so these invasive plants would be the pest in this case, but the pest management policy addresses more than just invasive plants. So yeah, just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, oh, that's fine. I just think that they're conflicting things right now.
Okay. Other questions from the public?
My name is Nick Nakari from Ben Lomond. I thought I heard Bob Fultz say that there was a ban on the use of pesticides. What is the present written policy of the water district regarding pesticides?
Yeah, so we have a integrated pest management policy. There's one particular pesticide which is banned, which is glyphosate. But otherwise, there is a particular set of circumstances in which herbicides or pesticides cannot be used. And if it doesn't fall within those standards, then it would be allowed for use.
So we all know that we're talking about a pretty strong poison, otherwise it wouldn't be useful. And what we're doing is kind of like a fight, like Sisyphus trying to roll that stone up the hill and coming back down. From what I've heard is that it goes back so quickly that it's frustrating for the board. You know, the world is constantly changing and the environment's constantly changing. One other thing I heard here tonight is that the broom doesn't really have a strong effect on water quality or the watershed itself. So we're kind of fighting against nature by all this fight against the broom. I would suggest that maybe we do it in a way that doesn't lower our standards to using poisons in our own backyards, our own watershed, and that we minimize the amount of broom that we're going after. I mean, you're never going to stop it. It's in my backyard. It's probably in everybody's backyard that's here. You're never going to win this fight. It's a Sisyphus fight where the rock rolls right back down. So I would ask the board to consider kind of phasing it down a little bit to what you really need and doing it in a natural way that respects the residents. Everybody here has been unanimous about it so far, and I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same way. And it also respects the nature, the wildlife, the animals, the fish, and just the quality of our general environment here. So I would ask that you consider not using any pesticide and scale it back to a more reasonable level where you feel like you can continue to keep it back in the areas where you fight.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public here in attendance want to speak?
Yeah, I got a few questions just because I'm not.
Could you tell us who you are?
Sorry, my name is Noah Brown. I just got a few questions because I'm not the most up to date with what's happening here. I think he kind of answered what my big thing is, like, why is the broom an issue? Like obviously putting water or putting poison in your water is not a good thing. And we're trying to fight this broom off, but how is it impacting us negatively, on being a pest, which is annoying?
Yeah, Jody, could you talk a little bit about the how the broom maybe impacts those species out there?
Sure, yeah. So the French broom, as you guys know, is not native to the area. It's very, it alters the structure of the habitat. So a lot of the endangered species are adapted to open sand, and it comes in and takes advantage of that open sand, creates a dense, as Chris showed in his photos, dense monoculture in some cases of shrubs. It can alter the nutrient cycling of our ecosystem. So it's a nitrogen fixer, a very prolific one. So it adds nutrients, nitrogen specifically, which is limiting for many plants. And that will in turn promote other non-native plants, including exotic grasses, to come in. It's kind of a, then the third one is promoting fire. So you take an otherwise pretty open habitat with just scattered trees and herbaceous plants in between, and then you add shrubs, and now you've increased the contiguity of the fuels, the density of the fuels. Broom is very flammable. And then, as someone mentioned, the June beetle is Mount Hermon June beetle is one of the species that we're worried about. It's a plant eater. We don't know if it's able to eat French broom. There's been no studies showing that it does. It does eat multiple species, so there's a chance it does, but there's also a chance that the broom is outcompeting. It's definitely outcompeting the native plants, and there's a chance that it's reducing, and in so doing, reducing plant availability for the June beetle. It definitely alters the habitat for the Xanthium bandwagon grasshopper, which is one of those, along with several of the plants, species that can only occur in really open, sandy habitat. So I think those are the main mechanisms, but I'm probably missing a few.
Yeah, I'd also add that just obviously they are plants that require water, and this is our watershed land. So obviously they, as a minor effect, take up some of that water rather than letting it recharge the aquifer.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else here in attendance? Question? If not, I'd like to go to one of the members attending remotely.
You got remote, somebody remote?
Yes, that's what I was,
Okay.
that's where I was going. Thanks. Yes. Chris Moran? Your,
Hello?
yes, Chris, go ahead.
I wish I could. I can't see anybody any longer. All right.
But you can speak.
I can, and I will. My name is Chris Moran, and I worked for the city of Santa Cruz for 26 years in the Public Works Department. And I was an environmental analyst. I live in Ben Lomond and attended San Lorenzo Elementary as a child. I know the people and politics of this valley as well as anyone. 2018, we got rid of board members that were in favor of using poisons and glyphosate on the watershed. And new board members voted to stop the use of glyphosate. And in 2020, they initiated this integrated pest management document before you today. And Rick Moran worked on that document. But apparently this document didn't go far enough because other herbicides and pesticides are being used instead of glyphosate, bypassing the intention of the original document. Revisions to this IPM policy must broadly state that this water district will not apply any chemicals or poisons on our watershed. Those people are still here from 2018. The outcry then was real, and it is real now. There's nobody here that wants this in this meeting tonight that I know of. In 2013, the Water District, Kennedy, oh, you already read that, Rick. I'd like to read section 1C of this 2025 policy before you, which states that we will expand our IPM policy and best management practices with the goal of eliminating the use of pesticides. Well, that sounds good to me. Yet in the very first sentence of this document, there's the following revision. It is the goal of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District to, we had eliminate, and now it's minimize. We're going backwards here. Minimize the use of pesticides on the district property. We want to eliminate them. That's what this group is talking about. That's what individuals are saying here. Sandhills Conservation and Management Plan from Jody McGraw. She's been quoted many times, says that the likelihood that herbicides used in the sandhills will be able to reach groundwater and potentially contaminate the public water supply. That gives me chills. So I'm speeding through this. Material safety data sheet of Garlon 4 says that the chemical triclopyr is water soluble and it has a 45-day half-life. So the lady was right, it's about 90 days, and that it will dissipate with ultraviolet light. But there is no ultraviolet light in the sand. Once it gets down there, it's not going to dissipate. The Olympia watershed is right behind and above the Zayante Fire Department, where we have 2 wellheads that supply much of the water that we drink. So we apply We apply poisons of Garlon 4 or whatever else, and the chemical permeates downhill to Zayante Creek, which joins the San Lorenzo River. According to the Bulletin of Environmental Contamination and Toxicology, Garlon 4 and Roundup herbicides pose an acute toxicity to salmon and trout. Their study was meant to broaden the knowledge of triclofire on 3 salmon species. So here we have the SLV Water District spending almost $4 million on the Fall Creek fish ladder in hopes of reviving the salmon population, only to be applying the very thing that could cause its further demise. So in my mind, what I see is humans, we'll use Sisyphus again, or you can use the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, never is painted. What I see in my mind is humans cutting bushes or trees, dabbing, spraying, dribbling toxic material onto the cut. I see rain or fog because Garlon 4 is water soluble. I see endangered beetles dealing with toxicity, and I see poison plumes percolating into the groundwater, my drinking water, and flowing into local rivers and oceans. Yeah, I'm worried. And one last thing, while others may pollute, the one entity in this world who shouldn't be adding poisons to a watershed, we are a water district, we drink that stuff, would be the very people that are entrusted to protect that water, this water district. Valley residents have traditionally been proud of the clean water that is produced here in our mountains. Let's keep it that way for all of us who live here. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else from here in attendance? I see no one else online remotely wishing to speak.
Can I make one other comment?
If can you be brief?
Yeah. No,
can you be brief?
No 5-minute thing. One is, well, I appreciate Jason's showing us how much Garland 4 was used this past project. It begs the question of how much Garland 4 glyphosate has been used since 2000. All right, and how much are we going to foresee using in the future? Not going to fit in that. All right. This is a little parable, perhaps. The gift horse. Sometimes we should look a gift horse in the mouth. In 1978, the EPA granted the water district the abandoned sand quarry in Olympia. A mining company had created the conditions that led to the various flora and fauna to be put on the endangered species list. And they also created suitable conditions for invasive species to take hold. That mining company failed before they could be held responsible by the Surface Mining and Reclamation Act of 1975. Since then, the district has been saddled with the huge burden that exceeds our limited funds. We should not add to that burden by putting pesticides with so many uncertainties on our watershed. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to come back to the board for any further questions or comments based on what we've heard here from the public or other thoughts that you may have had since then. Alina?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I approach this, I'm most worried about losing free opportunities for fuel reduction and what is the liability of the district if we aren't protecting the community. The rest of the community all participated in the shaded fuel break. And I know that we did do some of it, but we didn't control the broom like everyone else. And then when the fires come, we already have lawsuits of the 3M fire foam that, you know, we've gotten hits near well sites. There's not a threat to our water, but it could be in the future. And so are we trading something that has a half-life to something that is a forever chemical that we can never get out of our water? And so trying to balance those things is really important, and not just even from the fire foam. When we have a big fire, all of that smoke and everything that everyone inhaled, the things that burn on people's properties, all of that goes up into the air and we all breathe that. Is that worth giving up dabbing some plants. I think everyone keeps saying, oh, it's going into our watershed, it's going into the watershed. But we heard from one of the experts here that dabbing has limited exposure to our environment. So is that the truth that it's going into our water when we have the expert saying that it doesn't? And Santa Cruz took a look at all of this and they ended up rolling back their glyphosate policy to be able to treat broom. And I hear a lot of things that they're saying toxicity to salmon. I just don't. I am a biologist that worked mainly with salmonids, and tires, they have 6 ppd, which is lethal to coho. So, I mean, it's, again, you're picking and choosing our battles on what we need to do here. I also, if we don't control the boom broom, the June beetle doesn't have native plants to be able to feed on. And I did a quick search, but maybe Jody can answer that. I don't think that June beetle larvae feed on Scotch broom. Is that correct?
They're not known to feed on Scotch broom, French broom, or Portuguese broom, which are out there.
Oh, okay. Okay, so yeah, so saying that like they're going to get the pesticides from the Scotch broom, I'm not really making that connection since that's not their food source. But if the Scotch broom takes all over the native plants, then they don't have a food source. And I was super excited about this horticultural vinegar. I ended up looking it up, and unfortunately for mature woody French broom, it may only burn the leaves and not kill the extensive root system. And that's when we're getting into needing something that's on the big woody stuff. So, I mean, it was just a cursory look. I was just really excited that maybe there's something else that we could use. But it said online that you need to do like a fine mist on all of the leaves and the undersides. And since it's non-selective, we could be hitting a lot of the native plants as well, since you're having to mist that versus dabbing. So that's just kind of where I'm trying to look at all of that, and you're just kind of balancing everything. Obviously no one wants pesticides in their water, but if we don't control our fuel sources and reduce those, then it starts to snowball. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. All right, Director Ross.
Oh, no. A lot of food for thought. Chris, is there any what's the downside of not managing the habitat? I'm looking at the extreme. If we just let the broom do its thing, it's nature's Darwin at work, and broom is clearly superior. What's the downside to I guess the habitat, the downside to us as a water district? Do we have legal issues that we would then be subject to? I mean,
I would say the main driving force behind us removing the broom is this habitat and these species. And we have a obligation legally to care for these species. And so that's why we are creating the Habitat Conservation Plan, which will actually detail and also provide a continual funding source through a non-wasting endowment, how we're actually going to fund this in the long term. So that's how we actually are going to have that funding source year after year to maintain this. I think I got a little bit off your point there.
No, that's good. So, so from a financial perspective, the district, I guess, would be subject to a lawsuit because we're not protecting the endemic species.
Yeah, I think lawsuit or just fines. But for me, it's once the Habitat Conservation Plan is in place, we are going to have to do this work, and we have it all done right now. So it's really important that we just maintain it in this interim period until we can actually get the funding and the plan of the Habitat Conservation Plan in place. So that's my focus, is making sure that we don't let this slip up in the interim. Because as one of our commenters mentioned, there have been spurts where we've done this before, where we maintain it for 6-10 years, and then it kind of passes, and then everything is just back. So really, we are trying to ensure the continuity so that we do actually do this right and get it done.
And we had heard, and I've read that that really it starts to flower after 3 years, right? So your idea is that we really have 2-3 years max from March, when all these young seedlings have come up, to really have a plan that just hopefully takes care of them.
And optimally, we would do it sooner rather than later, because the bigger that the plants get, that's the most expensive and hardest part of dealing with this, is dealing with the biomass of the plants after you pulled them out of the ground. So the larger they are, the harder it is to deal with all of that in terms of moving it, in terms of disposing of it, anything like that. So our goal is to continually manage this so that we don't let stuff get big enough where it does become hard to handle or so established that we can't pull it out with a weed wrench.
Okay, and so the area that you had shown us in the map that where these endemic species are found, I don't have a sense of scale. Do you believe that we can generate sufficient grants, including then an endowment to allow us to maintain that area forever? Or are we looking at having to fund this a lot from native revenues of the district?
The goal is that the endowment from the HCP would fund this work. The longer that you do this work, the easier it gets in terms of less broom coming back. And so the goal is to stay on it consistently, and it'll kind of winnow down in terms of the amount that we have to do every year. And the endowment, the goal is that that would fund that whole maintenance cost.
And do you have any sense for what would be a maintenance number that you would estimate would be required? Because we're talking 30 acres at least, right?
Yeah. Jody, do we have an idea of what that might cost? This is kind of on the spot for you, so no worries if not.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's run those numbers.
Okay.
No guesses? I mean,
I can help.
What?
I can help.
You can help? Yeah.
Well, the project was somewhere in the big project was somewhere in the $500,000 range. And that was obviously removing the big broom, dealing with all that biomass out there for 5-6 months. As we're going back, the stuff is smaller. It should be much easier. So maybe 200,000
annually
at the start. Yeah.
Okay.
Are we guessing at numbers here?
Yes, absolutely.
We are, and that's okay. I mean, not 50,000 and it's not 5 million. I guess I'm just struggling with, because this is sort of a Sisyphean task.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe at some point we just have to accept that and
or
you know,
or my suggestion is let staff come back with a realistic number after some further evaluation, if that is significant to boards further evaluation. So
okay. That's it for my follow-on questions.
Okay. Director Foltz?
Is the endangered species solely within that area that had the dash lines?
I believe, let me pull up the So Jody, is all of our endangered species habitat within? No, I know that it's not. There is some further, like down here. Let's see if you can see my cursor in this general vicinity, but it's managed separately. That's the Olympia Conservation Area, so it is managed
by whom?
By us.
Mm-hmm.
Separately, it has its own endowment and yeah, kind of management plan.
And what is the endowment expected to get to on the habitat conservation plan? Was it 3 million?
I don't have the figure off the top of my head.
That's a pretty important figure, and one that if we're close to having an HCP done, we should know. But let's say it's 3 million, just for grins, at a 4% return to have a non-wasting endowment, $120,000 a year. And 4% might be reasonable, it might be aggressive, I don't know. But so I think these are numbers that we probably need to take a closer look at. But I'm here to tell you, I'm skeptical that the numbers are going to close, given a plan that actually is comprehensive enough to do what we say we want to do. And especially given that we've got 4 decades of not having done it, at least in my experience. One of the things that troubled me a lot about this is that a community of 8,000 customers is supposed to care for habitat that I've been told is unique in the world, or at least the United States. If this is such an important thing for the country as a whole, why are 8,000 people solely responsible for taking care of it? It makes absolutely no sense. I have for years argued that this area outside of generating water for us, and so we want to make sure that aspect of it is protected, that this is not the core business of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District. Habitat conservation is a very different objective from the provision of safe water, quality water at a reasonable cost. I agree that there's some overlap, but it is not 100% overlap. And I think we as a district are taking on responsibilities that we have no hope in blankety blank of ever being able to fulfill, especially given that the land around it has broom and broom respects no boundaries. We could be pristine in our area, but we're going to constantly have to deal with the fact that folks next to us don't have the same objectives, because they sure as heck, if that's private land, are not going to be spending the kind of money. They don't have the kind of money to spend on it to be able to do what we say we want to do. So until there is a real plan, comprehensive enough, funded, and doesn't depend on the kindness of strangers, i.e. grant money, to be able to deliver what you say you want to do, I think we need to be looking at other options. So that's the habitat conservation part of it. With respect to the use of herbicides, I like the language that Mr. Moran was using, an organic plan. I am completely opposed to the use of any herbicides in this. And I want to ask staff, you know, I've used Polar Bear myself, and I get that there's a point at which it becomes non-useful. But did we try any other mechanical means before going immediately to the first resort, which apparently was the herbicide? Did we use jacks? Did we use something a little bit bigger? Not bringing vehicles in or tractors or anything like that, but there are other things you can use to be able to get more leverage, pulleys, etc. Did we try any of that before we went directly to the use of herbicides?
And these pulleys would be human pulleys, or they would be vehicle?
Well, I mean, there's jacks, there's all sorts of things you can use for being able to get additional leverage. I mean, this goes back to Archimedes, right? So there's things you can use to get additional leverage to either use mechanical means like jacks or what have you, or yes, through the use of pulleys, you can actually increase a human's ability to pull something. It doesn't sound like we did any of that. And to me, that is in fact the essence of determining whether or not something is a last resort. Because we couldn't use it, because we couldn't pull it through a Polar Bear, we then went immediately to herbicide. That's not last resort. That's first resort or second resort, but not last. unless last is defined as 2. And I think there's other things that we could have done there to be able to do that. I think the only one in this room perhaps that wants the use of herbicides are members of the board. Actually, this reminds me so much of 2017 and 2018, where the only people in the room that were arguing for the use of herbicides, even on a limited basis, was the board. The entire audience at the meetings that were held during that period of time were completely unanimous against it, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions. We're sort of replaying, and I think Kim had said, we're sort of replaying out what we already talked about almost 8 years ago, and basically having the same experience. I've been told in the past that the board should pay attention to the people that are in the room and what they want for policy, because that is what the community wants. Well, I think it's pretty clear what we heard tonight, which is the public does not want us to use herbicides in our watershed, period. Not minimize. And changing the policy to say minimize instead of eliminate absolutely doesn't sit well with me. In fact, I want to extend it to where we are, I think both Chris and Rick were saying, we are eliminating the use of it through the use of organic methods, and that we will find other methods, perhaps mechanical method, necessary to be able to do that. So that's what I would like us as a board to give direction to staff, because right now it looks to me like staff wants to use pesticides or herbicides. That is what board would give direction to staff on to develop that policy, which is to eliminate. So I know we don't have any specific action tonight, but I would ask that this be brought back to a future board meeting and that we have that discussion about giving specific direction to staff on eliminating the use of herbicides, period. No wiggle room, no looking for loopholes, no too clever by half, elimination.
Okay. All right. Couple of things that I've heard that I wanted to follow up on. The use of the herbicide was only in the Olympia watershed, correct? Yeah. How do we remove broom around our facilities? What do we do there?
We either weed whip or we polling is the first option, obviously, but
okay,
we'll weed whip if necessary.
Okay, all right. And for this, was it the locust trees?
Yeah, locust.
Locust trees. Did we look at other means to remove those? To a question that
they aggressively resprout, and we have not found any measures that would effectively prevent them from resprouting. Okay. It's pretty similar to eucalyptus trees,
right?
In that they are invasive and
so I think we're the district is attempting to balance here the attempting to protect species versus the watershed, and attempting to mitigate the locust and the broom in those areas with a limited application of the Garlon 4. In my mind, what's limited application. In one of my previous work roles, I was responsible for managing environmental risk evaluations on properties where we had chemical contaminations, and how did those chemicals migrate to further into the system. Given the dabbing that I've heard described, and what I know about the depths of our water wells and things like that, I have significant difficulty understanding how that limited use would migrate to our groundwater system. So based on the work that I did in the environmental industry, we're also balancing what I think is increased fire risk since 2019. But what I'm hearing about the Olympia watershed is not so much, well, is it reducing fire risk there?
This project that was implemented was a CAL FIRE wildfire prevention grant.
Okay. So if it's CAL FIRE, it must be then to reduce fire risk. Okay. And I think that that is a significant change since 2019. We've all seen the CZU fires and aware of what happened there. Do we need to do anything in this watershed area? And I feel that we do, based on fire risk in addition to species habitat protection. But I think we've heard other comments from the public here in particular. Are there other possibilities of the herbicides, the horticultural vinegar? I don't know.
I would love to explore.
So I think that it's appropriate to look at that. So with that,
I just wanted to add to what you're talking about, the fire danger. Part of the Sandhills habitat is also chaparral habitat, which is designed to burn. So we're mixing fire potential here.
But if it's the CAL FIRE that's giving us the grant for this, they're the ones that I'm referring to for fire removal aspects in these
I
areas.
mean, most of our lands are meant to burn.
Right.
But given our current, building up in the Louis and just kind of crowding it out and our lack of, forestry, removing those trees or letting the fires naturally burn, it's just not, our current regime is not really built for it. So naturally, yes, but in our current situation, not so much.
So based on what we have heard from both the public and the board members, I would ask you, Jason, to work with staff. And I think summarize what you think is being asked of. Based on all of the comments here being asked of, and what you think a plan is going forward on not only the integrated pest management plan, but the bigger than perspective on habitat protection. I'm hearing a suggestion from Director Fultz, which should we be attempting as a water district to manage habitat, being the Olympia watershed? I don't know, but it's a question. So are we? So take all of these questions, comments back then, and come back to the board then at a future meeting with, here's what you have heard, here's what you think you're being asked to do on both of those aspects.
Mark,
so I can't see which.
Well, I was up first, but
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Great, thank you. So if we're really worried about fire, that's a third topic, because we have 2,000 acres right up there that are much more susceptible to burning. And in fact, I think that's where the fire was. And we've been told that just because a fire goes through doesn't mean it won't go through again.
Agreed.
I'm grateful that CAL FIRE gave us that grant. I'm hoping in the future that they continue to jump on fires, even lightning strikes, immediately instead of letting the fires burn, because that's actually what gets the fire going and gets a foothold in it. And at that point, it becomes very difficult to stop. So let's make sure that we're giving direction in. If fire is going to become a component of it, it needs to be broader than just the Olympia watershed area. Okay. The second part of this is I appreciate the come back with. I'd like to say come back with no later than a particular time. So February,
I will ask that question of Jason. What do you think then?
How about March? The first board meeting in March.
first board meeting in March.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
What
Um,
in the list of things that you spoke to him about coming back? Probably not. I didn't hear you mention how strongly you've heard the public speak against the use of pesticides.
Staff have heard all of the comments from the public.
It just wasn't something you mentioned.
No, it's not something I mentioned, but I didn't mention everything. Staff have heard and the board has heard comments from the public. So I'd like staff to go back and reflect on that and come back to the board with, here's what we think we've heard, here's what we think we're being asked to do. So we'll leave it at that.
I just didn't hear it in the list.
We'll leave it at what I said. Thank you.
Okay,
Lena.
Yeah. I kind of been answering all these questions. I'd be really curious to see a cost comparison of, labor versus cost if we are trying to go out there and hand pull these ones that, we decided were too big to pull and pesticides were to use. Because it seems like that's going to be really labor intensive just to get one plant. So just kind of getting kind of a cost estimate on that type of stuff. I do really feel like a lot of this wasn't maybe based on the best science, but emotion, because we've heard a lot of misinformation tonight about, the larvae feed on it, which we've heard that's not true. About it getting to the groundwater, we heard that that's not true. Oh, we had the experts say that they don't. Okay. The environmental committees, the whole what conclusion was to allow limited use of pesticide is kind of where they got to, and there was a lot of supporters that ended up showing up to that. So that's also to be considered, and also what is the long-term plan if we can't use pesticides at all? How are we going to manage this fire danger and these, sensitive species that we have on these lands if we can't get rid of the broom? Kind of understanding that. So that's all.
Mark, I need to correct something here. Sorry, but there were on the environmental committee. I want to make sure people know the statement that Director Lang said about the environmental committee concluding that limited use of pesticides okay. That was not my position. And in fact, I would say we walked out of that meeting saying we needed to come have this meeting, not that there was a conclusion.
I should correct that, Bob. But there was a lot of support in that meeting for last resort for limited.
So I don't want to debate what was said or what was not said at the environmental committee meeting. I'd like district staff to go back and reflect on what you've heard here, what you've heard at the environmental committee meeting also, since other than Director Foltz, I wasn't there, Director Russ wasn't there, neither was Director Largay, who's not here this evening. The rest of the board wasn't there. These two individuals.
I was there.
But I'd like staff to reflect on that and come back to the board with, here's what you think, and here's what you're asking the board to further consider then. So.
And if I could also ask staff, just in the interest of being thorough, since the garland has been applied, 10 ounces, it sounds like we know very little about it. And I think it would be very helpful just to understand what research has been done. I heard a 45-day half-life. Okay, that's good, because that's one of the first questions I would have about something that's applied. And then what other tests have been done? I mean, in other words, if we're considering applying this in limited situations, we really need to understand what the trade-offs are. And I get the pure stance of no chemicals, period. I get that, and I understand it. But it would also be good to understand more about it. And I don't feel like we know enough about it. And I would really like to know more about it, where it's used, Have any long-term studies been done? What might be susceptible, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay,
I was hoping the commissioner would say some more.
okay.
Yes, I can definitely dig in and get a little more. I find with a lot of the pesticides, from the research that I've done, it's hard to find. You'll find research that is kind of saying it doesn't do this, and then research saying that it does this. So yeah, I can try to dig in a little bit and see what I can. See what I can do.
Remember glyphosate was okay.
Understand.
And DDT was okay.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
All right.
I just wanted to address the vinegar, the vinegar. I really hope that you guys check into it, and I appreciate you giving me your card. We can connect on that. I'm kind of disappointed that it was thrown out in a 5-minute search on the internet, that it wasn't something that worked. If you have old growth, you really have to spend a little time drilling some holes in that and putting the vinegar in, and it does kill it. It's not like something that is sprayed and wafts into native plants. So I really hope that research didn't influence going back to pesticides, because it does work. And you can reach out to Cabrillo Gardens, you can reach out to UCSD, and there's all kinds of information out there.
I've asked staff to do that, and I expect that they will.
Yeah.
So, yes.
It'd be worthwhile,
Okay.
for sure.
All right. Well, with that, we have nothing else on our agenda. I would like to adjourn this meeting. Thank you for your coming this evening, and